Episode 86 of Strange Brow Radio. Here we go again. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson, and today's guest from Bothell, Washington, the Bothell Hell House type of Washington, is author Keith Linder, experiencer Keith Linder. You may have seen his episode on the Travel Channel with the Ghost Adventure crew. They gave Keith a hard time, but I'm checking into the ins and outs of Keith's story. And there's a lot here, so I think we're about ready to clear his name. Let's talk to Keith Linder in a moment. But first, tell you about Etsy. There you can go to Feral by Erin, E-R-Y-N, all one word, and check out Alchemy Sound Tools. And when you do, if you're interested in what you see, let her know. Let her know how you heard about it. Sometimes we don't know. And if you just say, I heard it on this podcast, Strange Brow Radio, it goes a long way. So Feral by Erin, E-R-Y-N. Also, if you're ever in town up in northern Washington, go to the Manresa Castle in Port Townsend, Washington. They're wide open now. Haunted tours, well, sort of, but definitely a fantastic menu. Good drinks and loads of history at Manresa Castle. All right, we'll be back in a moment with our guest, Keith Linder. As I said, our guest today is author experiencer out of Bothell, Washington, which is just a ferry ride away for me, Keith Linder. And the book, The Bothell Hell House, the Poltergeist of Washington State, that's part one. And then part two is the book Attachments. Again, Poltergeist of Washington State. So not only do we talk about his book, but we talk about his time in the house. We talk about his episode with Mr. Baggins and the 40-some minutes in that episode. You know, they spend relatively little time actually doing the investigation comparatively to what other people do that actually live there, or in this case stayed for a week to 3 weeks. Other investigators have, and come away with Keith's story being credible. And so they didn't exactly get a fair shake during that. So I interview Keith and talk to Keith about his house out in Bothell, and we go over quite a bit. A lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things hopefully you didn't know, and I think they're pretty shocking. So we're going to get into that. Also, there's a documentary on YouTube, a free documentary called Demons in Seattle Uncovered. It is by director Don Phillips, and a team of investigators came in from the UK, including Scotland, and looked into the claims of Keith and his girlfriend at the time, Tina. The quick and the short is that their house was infested with something that seemed pretty demonic. And so Keith and his girlfriend had to put up with it and figure out how to live with it. And that's when the team from Ghost Adventures got a hold of them to shoot an episode. And so Keith and I talk about what happened during that briefly, but I'm mainly interested in Keith's story after the Travel Channel left and what happened in that house, the prior residents that lived in the house, the current residents that live in the house, what's the history of the house, what's around the house, and what do we know archaeologically about what's under it. So it's a really fascinating conversation. And part three of the book, part three of his book series will be coming out later this year, early next year. And so it's a really interesting conversation about what's coming out in part three, one that I really enjoyed having with him. So one thing I want to mention before we put Keith on is going back to supporting local businesses. If you can, I would find a way to do it quickly, because as things tighten up around you, local businesses won't be able to do what corporations will be able to do. And that's why I mentioned specifically the town of Port Townsend's Manresa Castle. Not only did we do live events there, we hope to do one more live event this year, if not more, in an outdoor setting. But Manresa Castle is just historic And if you haven't been there, you should at least go online and check out Manresa Castle in Port Townsend, Washington. And the owner, Cameron Roberts, who owns the bar half of there, is struggling to open and reopen. But he has such a talented staff and an amazing cook, which is his wife. And they have fantastic drinks and fantastic ambiance in a historic town. And so if you can, go be a patron over there and let them know that Strange Brow Radio sent you, because I enjoy mentioning them on air. I enjoy going there. It's about an hour and a half drive for me to get there, but it's relatively close speaking. So do try to get there. Enjoy your time at Manresa Castle. It's right next to amazing spots downtown, next to historic Fort Worden, and you could make a whole day, a weekend of it. You could stay at Manresa Castle. I suggest trying to stay up in the turret room on the third floor. There's some history there for sure, but it's a wonderful place to look up and stay. So Manresa Castle, can't say enough about it. Okay, I hope you guys listened to last week's episode regarding the UFO news that's come forth. Very specific wording from the Pentagon about crashed UFOs or UFO retrievals, unidentified flying objects, or UAPs, and having more than metamaterial on hand. They use the word, we don't have these materials from this earth, which I thought was interesting. Made of materials not from this earth. Just listen to the wording of that, because that's in quotes. This earth, well, someone decided that. You don't go do a press release and talk about something that's been so confidential for so long without parsing every sentence, every word, the flow, the meter. Someone decided this earth. So what other earths are there? That's my question. And it may open up a larger, I guess, conundrum, secret question to ask about other realities or other planets. This is all happening now under our watch, and it's yours to do with what you want. My question is, who's going to run the narrative, them or us? Or is there going to be a scrimmage in between? It always seems like we're the last to know. But I'll try to give the information to you as soon as I know, so you at least know before your neighbor. And that's the way I'll try to do it. And I'll try to, I think you guys like the news portion of things here. And so I'll try to come packing a little bit more often for you here before our guest and inform you on things. Also, if you go onto SoundCloud and type in Strange Brow Radio, you'll see more updates from some experiments we're doing here, including a test on who I call Hilda and Bobby. And we're basically using them as trigger objects or tulpas to see if we can elicit some kind of supernatural sound moment. Not running video, just audio. And so they are tucked away in their little dollhouse right now, which is outside. And things are getting more interesting as we go on. So again, go to SoundCloud, type in Strange Brow Radio, and you'll see on there the experiments of the two dolls. Now, I understand dolls are not everybody's favorite. They just don't creep me out. So that's all that matters. All right, what will creep you out is our next guest story here, Keith Linder and the Bothell Hell House. All right, on the phone with me now is Keith Linder in Bothell, Washington, author of the first book, The Bothell Hell House, a Poltergeist of Poltergeist of Washington State, and part 2, the author of Attachments, Poltergeist of Washington State. So, hello, Keith.
Hello.
It's
happy
good to
Monday.
have. Yeah, man, it's good to have a neighbor on here that can understand these things a little bit. So it's comforting.
I know, right?
have you on here. And, I've already told the audience who you are, reminded them of your case. And so many people in this community know about the Bothell Hell House, know about everything that unfolded on the Travel Channel. And, those 49 minutes or however long the episode was out of Ghost Adventures painted a picture of you, and it was kind of case closed and a lot of eye rolling. But I don't want to do that to you because I think there's something here. And after going through, 3 hours of catching up on where you were and where you've been and where you are, I'm telling you, audience, there's something going on here. And, it's a smart audience I have, Keith, and we're not going to have to convince them over the type of language that you're going to use here describing entities or the spirit form. They understand all that. They've caught themselves up, on the prior 90 episodes we've done here. So I don't really want you to have to walk too far down buying the Bothell house and all the the steps that you've done before, but we need to go into that territory a little bit, and especially if there's new information that has come out since then that you'd like to explore. So tell people briefly about, when you moved into the supposed or reported Hell House and what your experiences were there.
Yeah, good question. So me and my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now, Tina, we moved into this house May 1st of 2012. And Bothell was maybe, I don't know, on a good day, like now, 20-minute drive from Seattle, going northeast. And me and Tina had been together for 2 years prior. She had her place, I had mine. And just like anybody or any other average couple, we moved in and began experiencing phenomena right away. On day one, when we got the keys to the house, signed the papers, shook the homeowner's hand, and did the tour de France inside the home, he left, and it's just me and my girlfriend there. House is empty, vacant. And during the middle of our conversation, a kid cough cuts in, just out the blue, very loud, very distinct. And I wrote this in my first book, and how it transpired, because I believe this is very important. It was one of those instances where me and Tina were sitting side by side. We heard the same thing, and we said the same thing at the same time. Was that a kid cough? I kid you not. So it was never one of, hey, I think I heard something. Did you hear it? Or she came from outside and I had to retell the story to her. We heard it at the very same time. It sounded like it came from one of the upstairs bedrooms. Now, me and Tina have no experience with the paranormal. We know zilch about it. We're just house high right now. We're in love with this house. We like it. We think it was a good decision. And we must have maybe talked about the weird voice for about 5 minutes, but we wasn't nowhere close to thinking it was ghost or paranormal or poltergeist related. It sounded weird. It definitely came or sounded like it came from upstairs, but maybe it did. Who are we to determine? Maybe it came from outside, but it was weird. And we made a mental note, but after 5 minutes, we went on about our business. Fast forward 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the home. Now we're living in the home. We're moving in. And we both notice at the same time again that objects are missing. My car keys, meaning my extra set of car keys, aka car fobs. I call them car fobs nowadays. But it was my pair that I never used. It was a pair that I kept in a plastic container glove box in my safe. And I remember I didn't give it to the movers. I hand walked it over or drove it myself. And I've never used these keys. But they're gone. I went to retrieve another item and I noticed, my keys are gone. And Tina's coming to me with her instances of missing jewelry. We're both coming to each other with instances of missing silverware. And that's pretty much the precursor to everything that's known about this case, about how activity starts off slow, gradual, missing items, phantom footsteps, we heard them, waking up in the morning and finding every kitchen cabinet door wide open, nothing being rummaged through, nothing being taken out or rearranged. It's just a weird tapestry of why are all my kitchen cabinet doors and kitchen closet door wide open? No earthquake the night before. It's a 2-story home. And to add, I guess, sort of more mystery is the kid toys. And we don't have kids. Nobody's living in the home with us. We're finding kid toys displayed out in the open. In the home, you wake up in the morning, go down for a cup of coffee. There are kid toys on the stairwell, coffee table, kitchen counter, almost deliberately put in plain sight so you don't overlook them. And you pick these toys up and you can't make heads or tails. And once again, we're not nowhere, me and Tina, our knowledge of the paranormal is zero. So our rational explanation that we're telling ourselves is somebody's pranking us. Somebody has a third set of keys that are coming in very cleverly, mind you, very dangerous to do while we're asleep, and putting kid toys everywhere, leaving kitchen cabinet doors wide open. And then I guess the day of true realization was the day the plant levitated off the floor. And I mean levitated and darting upward while we were watching a movie together. And that was about June or July of 2012, this plant. And then there's no rational for that. There's no explanation, scientifically for that, of why a plant would dart up, straight up, do a 360-degree spin, and fall back to the ground. Now, we rushed to the plant, obviously, and looked for a wire or remote control device or some sort of control mechanism. And it was Tina's plant. It was not like the plant was there when we got there. So she brought it in with her. So then we said, aha, I think we have a kid ghost living with us, especially because that night after the plant levitated, we went to my office and Google searched online of how can you tell if your house is haunted? And everything, I kid you not, everything that we found on the internet, we had already experienced. We were like in early phase 1 of, yeah, these things are happening, da 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 da. Yeah, your house might be haunted, and now we got this levitating plant, and we're like, oh, that's what that kid cough was about. So yeah, that was the earliest phases, or the early stage, I should say.
Okay, great. And there's a lot more. I mean, you're just touching on the highlights here as well. But I want to go to the toys here for a second. You said that the toys were left out so you could see them. You couldn't miss them. Tell me a little bit more about what types of toys and how they were placed and where.
Yeah, so these toys, two types. Jewelry, female jewelry, young, like, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe younger, female jewelry, earring, trinket, something like that. Not expensive by any means, but jewelry nonetheless. And the toys were like old Hot Wheel cars. Remember the Hot Wheel cars? I guess they still make them. I played with them growing up. But,
right, sure.
But not of this time period. I know enough about toys to recognize, because I have nieces and nephews, and say, this toy just came out, okay. But I know a toy that's years old, and these toys were dated. They looked like they did not fit this house. How could a toy, unless somebody collected them? The house was built in 2005, and these toys look way older than that. But they were still toys. And we started collecting them. I mean, it was weird that you would have this, so I didn't toss them aside. I just threw them in a drawer. And it became almost a routine of waking up, finding toy spiders, toy trucks, toy cars, The toy spiders were about the size that would fit in the Cracker Jack box, as well as the cars. But that was it. And one of the things I learned later, and this is much later, is with this type of phenomenon, poltergeist phenomena, and that's what this was later declared. Everything happens in phases. We're being weighed right now, me and Tina. We're being weighed and introduced to the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And we're trying, the spirits behind all of this are trying very cleverly to engage us. Mm-hmm. And by us engaging, maybe overcompensating, mm-hmm. Responding, is going to elevate the activity further. You know, now that once we saw the plant levitate, I kid you not, I believe within 24 hours came the loud banging. And I believe within 48 hours came objects being thrown. Objects being thrown, all of Tina's plants, pottery, ironing board, iron. You know, irons are pretty, you know, nobody wants to ever want to get hit by an iron. You know, iron your clothes, yes, but not get hit by one. These things are now becoming projectiles, and they zoom by the corner of your eye, and boom, you look at the noise, and oh, there's an iron there, or oh my God, Tina's plant again. It shatters upon impact as soon as it hits the wall, and this becomes a nightly routine because we work during the day. We get home about 5 or 6, and about 8 p.m. It's fun time from the ghost point of view. It's fun time. Up until the time we go to bed and time to wake up in the morning. It's fun time.
You said something, too, in one of your interviews that you said once an object is thrown, it almost releases a behavior for a couple of weeks of throwing stuff constantly. Is that right?
Yeah, so, objects start off in phases, meaning small, medium, large. The plants, the iron, ironing board, lamp shade, a can of starch, ashtray. I mean, it went from small, medium to large in the frequency of, you know, okay, we have one item being thrown tonight. Okay, the next one will be thrown 24 to 48 hours. Now it's, 2 items are being thrown tonight. You know, we would get a plant, Tina would try to save it by, you know, resuscitating it by putting it in new pottery, new dirt. And it would throw that same plant again, you know, almost deliberately to taunt you. And or it would throw, because I iron my clothes, we have the hallway upstairs, and there's a video on my YouTube channel that shows the ironing board being thrown. Mm-hmm. And you see the ironing board be thrown. I have a camera trained on the office because that was happening every night. You can almost set your watch to it. And sure enough, it'll be thrown, and you know, it makes a lot of ruckus, a lot of noise. You respond to it, and it's a mess everywhere. So different sizes. It seemed like nothing was off the table as far as being thrown. But the worst, like I said, is yet to come. This is still introducing Keith and Tina to the program.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this here, and I just want to get right to it with you, is you have a real low fear factor to when it comes to the things that are happening to you on camera. You have a very cool, calm, and collected Bothell approach to this all, Keith. And so I think people are distracted by that and interpret that as something, you know, that you've internalized this because you're hoaxing it. I don't think you're hoaxing this at all. You just have a low fear factor. Talk a little bit about what that's like and what's going on in Keith's head as this shit's happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I got dinged for that a lot. And when I reported my phenomena on video, or people see the phenomena and like, no way, he's too calm for that. He's too calm. Right. And people don't understand there's 2 dimensions to that aspect. One you just talked about, and I'll talk about both of them. The first one is, you're right, I do have a low fear factor. I have a calm demeanor. I wrote in my first book that my profession, I've been in this profession going on 30 years, is customer facing. I am a problem solver, and I've been and seen and heard the worst that customers have thrown at me over the phone or in their face or via email. And we're trained to not take the customer's frustration out. I mean, it's horrible, it's terrible, personally. Don't separate the frustration from the individual, meaning yourself, and then respond by solving the customer's problem. Dial them back. You know, the customer wants you to sue you, call you all kind of names over the phone. You know, in one ear, out the other is my expression. Okay. And I incorporated that with the phenomena. Now, one thing about the phenomena is it's happening in real time. In my IT background, the things I'm seeing defy the laws of physics or the laws of gravity as we understand it. And I'm equally discerned, scared, but in control, but at the same time, amazed because I can't believe I'm witnessing this. Like, you know, it's that realization of, is this really happening to me? Mm-hmm. You know, when an object levitates, you never live your life thinking you're going to see something like this. And when you do, you're really forced with two reactions, fight or flee. You know, and me and Tina, we did not have because she's in the same field I am, sort of fleeing. Now, it was scary. It was discerning. But once again, my logic took over in the sense of, to use an analogy of, you know, one of my favorite sci-fi characters, Mr. Spock. Because people always tell me who study the paranormal, who go after the paranormal, well, didn't you think they would kill you or you would die? Or, and I'm like, you know what? My logic is if they wanted to kill us, based on what I've seen, we'd be dead already, right? I mean, come on. I'm sleeping. I'm knocked out. You obviously can throw objects while I'm awake. It's not far-fetched, so you think of doing while I'm asleep. You can set a fire and lock every door in the house, and I can't get out. So I don't think it's what they're after. I don't think death is what they're after. I think fear. They want to invoke fear because they get stronger off of that. And I later confirmed that theory by when I would talk to paranormal teams in the churches who were very familiar with this phenomena, and they tell you, and we're being guided, of don't overreact, don't give in to fear. And I was really sort of peeved, to put it lightly, that Ghost Adventures exploited that. Well, look at his calm demeanor. You know, look at his da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, I can understand. I can't understand why a Zach Baggins, after 20 years of TV shows, still jumps at stuff.
Right.
I mean, come on. I mean, I living in the house at ground zero, never experienced the paranormal. I didn't leap and jump and reek and I mean, yeah. You throw that back at me and Tina when in fact that's what you're supposed to do, because believe it or not, if we give in to the fear or overcompensate too much, the poltergeist takes a mental note of that and says, aha, okay. Yeah, it's like putting logs on the fire. Fear, overreaction is like putting more logs on the fire. And I was really surprised that we got dinged for our calm demeanor because people were just getting a one-dimensional look at Keith and Tina without asking the question you asked of what's his occupation, what's his livelihood, what's he been in life, where's he been, you know, is he an Army veteran, did he go to Desert Storm, you know, everybody reacts differently, and quite honestly, my calm demeanor probably saved me. I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah, and you were utterly transparent and have been totally transparent all the way through here, and invited pretty much anybody that showed interest, an honest interest in your case, to come in, look at you thoroughly, look at Tina thoroughly. And you've come away with quite a bit. I mean, there's been at least 3 solid teams that have come into your house. There's been at least 1 documentary that people can find online, a couple different books. And everybody that I've found has had legitimate experiences at your place and have come away with some amazing details about the case here. So let's talk a little bit about the things that has happened at the house that were open books after the Travel Channel, and now it seems like we're coming to some solid evidence. The writing, in particular, on the wall was a mishmash of different cultures being represented, but the writing on the wall is this black smoky substance that at the time we didn't really know what was happening. It just looked like graffiti out of a paint can, but it certainly is not, according to the analysis that you've had done on this. So describe a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, Poltergeist wall writings, like I said, nothing new in the documented cases of previous Poltergeist cases, but every case is different. There's been cases reported paint, blood, plasma, unknown substance, yellow, and us, it was black oil. It escalated to this mysterious black oily-like substance. And at first, we were just told to always paint over it right away. Hey, no. Don't let the spirit get a hold of your home. Paint over that stuff right away. But the last substance I didn't paint over because I was asked not to, once again, by Ghost Adventures. And I thought they were going to take some of it with them. I thought they were going to chisel, carve out, ask me. I would say, yeah. Take it with you, take it to a lab, and tell the world what that stuff is made out of. Because understanding, once again, I'm in IT, I'm not an investigator, but I know you just can't base everything on appearance. If it looks like spray paint, you got to confirm that theory. I think it's spray paint. Okay, test it. And let the test tell you. If you're right, you're right. Then I'm in trouble. If you're wrong, we got a true mystery here. So nobody did that. Nobody tested it. People came, saw, laughed, theorized. Nobody wants to test the black oil. The oil is staring them in the face. Finally, I did. And when I did, the results came back organic material. It was a equipment called an XRD or XRF gun. Highly expensive. It tests metal. It tests paint material. The gun itself costs about $20,000 to $60,000. It's about the size of a smoke control device. That's about the size of it, but it costs about $20,000 to $60,000. So it's not readily available, obviously. But we did test it, and it came back. The materials almost identical to what bone black, the substance, is made out of. Bone black, aka bone char, bone ash. Now, when the gun analyzes the substance, it doesn't tell you what bone that is bone black. It tells you what the substance is made out of. It gives you every ingredient. So now I have to shop around with this notepad of everything the XRD gun pulled up, and I'm calling these art museums from various cities in the country, asking them, while showing them pictures of the bone black or the black oil. And I'm asking them because I want them to look at the picture, and I'm going to give them the ingredients of what I got off this device. And some of these art galleries, like I said, had this device because, once again, they're an art gallery. And they came back and said, that's bone black. Now, I never heard of bone black, like I never heard of poltergeist, apparition, things of that nature. So I'm like, bone black, what is that? And the guy on the phone's like, that's a rare form of paint. It's one of the original forms of paint used for calligraphy or pictography. And I, in my brain, like, aha, oh, I'm close to something, because if you see in the wall writings in my office, some of it is calligraphy or pictography, meaning the upside down man. That's a symbol. And at that time, I already knew that symbol is a Native American symbol. I've been through history. You've been through history growing up. You know Native Americans wrote symbols, pictography. So now I'm like, okay, now the pieces are sort of falling into place, because you talk about bone black, bone ash, one of the oldest forms of painting, And I asked people, well, what is it made out of? I mean, I got all these ingredients here, phosphate and other things. And they said, oh, it's incinerated. The reason why it's called bone black is because it's incinerated bison bone, buffalo bone. And these are their words, not mine. I'm like, once again, aha, buffalo bones. And I'm like, well, why did they incinerate the buffalo bones? And the historical, and like nothing I'm saying is made up, so anybody can Google search this and find it themselves. Bone black and bone ash became prevalent in the 1800s, especially the mid 1800s, near the mass extinction of the North American or American buffalo. The carcass was always left behind. It was the hide that was most valuable until somebody in the plains said we can make the hide, meaning the bones, a commodity if we reduce the bone to bone ash and sell it as bone black, meaning black paint. Okay? And that's where it originated from in North America. But however, the person got that idea from Native Americans who had been using bone black for centuries. Okay, they've been using it for centuries. They've been reducing it down. So that in itself just made my mouth drop because now I know what the substance is made out of, and the mannerism in which it's made just boggles the mind. Intense heat of buffalo or bison bone, and they use every portion of the bone of the bison except the head. And if you reduce it down, confine it down, it becomes a charcoal-like powder. Today it's used for infiltration, but still certain places use it for black paint. You cannot buy it off the store. You cannot call Home Depot. And I always tell people, because they say, oh, it was fake, it was spray paint. I say, call Home Depot, your neighborhood Home Depot, or Lowe's, or anywhere, and ask them for a can of bone black. Right. They're going to put you on hold, or they're going to come back and say, what the heck are you talking about? Because it's not readily available to a consumer like you and I. Anybody who studies art and paint, who knows Rembrandt and Picasso, who used it, matter of fact, would know what bone black is. I didn't know what it was, but this was an education for me, and it adds to what we had already been capturing about the upside down man symbol, the Native American EVPs, the history of Bothell, the Native Americans that were in the area of Bothell, something that we debunked Ghost Adventures when they said they could not find any evidence of Native American ever living in Bothell, which I just told you, and you're in the same region of the world that I am. You know, that's just totally ludicrous. Still to this day, I can't believe they said that on national TV. But all anybody has to do is right now is Google Bothell, Washington, and look up the counties here, and you'll see relatively, and still today, that this area is heavily Native American. So I don't know where they went with that, but it was just totally off. So yeah, that's what that was the wall substance. What was made out of bone black.
Well, yeah, and you know the manner in which it was laid down on your drywall, this 2-part undulation cobwebbing is very artistic and strange looking. Now, we'll go ahead and move into this territory, but you had a documentary crew out there from the UK, a guy by the name of Don Phillips brought his team out, and some other people from Scotland as well, and they did some pretty intense analysis on this writing on the wall. What did they walk away with?
Well, yeah, the wall writing intrigued everyone, including Don Phillips, Steve Mara, and you're right, Nick Kyle, who was the president at the time of the SSPR, one of the oldest paranormal orgs in the world, and these individuals lived in the home 2.5 weeks. They lived, keyword, lived in the home. And they did what most vetted researchers do is you study the evidence, you study the wall writings. They took pictures, they measured it, they presented it to paint experts, to colleagues, and their conclusion, anybody who looks at it objectively will see Keith didn't paint this stuff. I mean, it's on the ceiling. It's on every four walls in the office. Some of it protrudes or extends behind the office appliances, the TV, the computer desk, stereo, the speaker, the entertainment center. They didn't do this stuff. And Steve and Dawn in their analysis were able to see that rather quickly upon entering the home and living in the home. And when you see the analysis, like I said, of the bone black, and it's not a readily available paint substance that you can buy, it becomes apparent, but you have to understand Poltergeist to be able to understand Poltergeists have done this for centuries, and only recently, and I hope this continues, because this rarely happens. Most Poltergeists, when they write on the wall, people erase that stuff right away because they're so frightened. They don't want. They're thinking in their mind, and it's a justifiable fear, because we had the same fear. You want to just paint over it right away. Well, you can't test it then. It's contaminated. It's gone. And this Poltergeist, because you see the other wall writings. I believe this Poltergeist wanted this stuff to be done. It wrote so many times that we would paint over the wall, and the paint would bleed through the primer. It would bleed through the paint. We would buy bucket after bucket. And finally, when we got to the right bucket of paint to where you couldn't see the substance anymore, the Poltergeist would write again. That's why if you see that office from the beginning on my YouTube channel to where it is now, you can see the different shades of paint of me constantly painting over wall writings. So finally, I say, I'm not painting over it anymore. It becomes redundant until we solve the Poltergeist problem. I'm not painting it over the wall anymore. And the last time I didn't paint over it allowed me to get that analysis. But that never would have happened if I would have just painted over it. No. And we never. Then somebody would say, yeah, it was spray paint. Yeah, that's why he was in a hurry to paint over it. Yeah, he didn't want
paint your whole place bone black.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And then the bone black that you can buy doesn't come in the paint buckets that you and I would normally buy paint for. It comes in like nail polish size bottles. Right. And also, but people don't know that, and they just go to the knee-jerk reaction of, spray paint, or he did himself, or looks amateur. See, I could have done that. And that's the wrong approach to take when you look at this type of phenomena, because the Poltergeist knows this. The Poltergeist in our house has a level IQ to where everything it's going to do, it's going to have to benefit the Poltergeist and not benefit Keith and Tina. So when Zach and other people say, it looks like spray paint, that's why it did it in that manner. Okay, it did it in that manner to suggest fakery. Okay, to where if you just look at it at a glance, spray paint. 666, Keith and Tina. It's too many Hollywood movies. That's so generic, so cliche. Mm-hmm. It knows that. But the thing the Poltergeist doesn't know or doesn't think you're going to do, and it was right, its proof the concept was right, is the teams that come in are not going to test it. But I did. I finally did. And when I finally did, and I went back to these people like, aha, you still think it's spray paint now? They have nothing to say. They're like, oh, bone black? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, and you saved that report from the test of the writing?
Yeah, I put that in both books. All that's in both.
Yeah, I mean, good for you. That's fantastic. And, just to give a little, I mean, I'm an artist. I don't work specifically with Indian ink, but we do some drum building out here in Port Orchard and have a little Etsy shop. And the type of supplies that Keith's talking about, these are very expensive things to go try and find. You don't just hop on Amazon and buy bone black. So it would be a very costly ruse to pull.
Very costly. Get it in the quantity that you would need it. Yeah, it just don't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on from Travel Channel and Ghost Adventures here. I want to talk about your time with the people that have lived at your residence, like this Dawn Phillips or
Yes.
Carissa Hartley. She spent 3 weeks there, and her
Yes.
testimony of your place is incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, you've invited people to come in and basically have free reign to debunk this place, and they just can't. They're walking away with stuff specifically about the Duwamish Native Americans out that way that were all over the creek beds, all over the lakes, pretty much any
Yeah.
valley that had an open floor that was, had food coming out of the river system or the streams was where you'd find the Duwamish over there. So for there to not be Duwamish in your area would be kind of nuts. But it wasn't just the Duwamish that they came away talking about. They talked about your place being built atop something that the construction crew found pretty interesting, what they were finding when they were digging there. Why don't you start with what Don found out with that?
Yeah, so Don Phillips and Steve Merrick lived in the home January and April of 2016. Carissa, Nikki Novell came pretty much almost simultaneously in January/February of 2016. And Carissa did stay 3.5 weeks. Nikki Novell, a week and 2 days, I believe. And Don and Steve, coming from the UK, when they arrived in the home, it was always a contingent that they're going to live in the home. You got to live at ground zero. And this immediately started encountering phenomena and gathering data and evidence because it was readily available in the sense of their methodology combined with what the spirits found receptive did phenomena around them. Now, one of the things that made Dawn go underneath the house, the first person ever and the only person ever to go underneath the house, and he conducted about an hour and a half long EVP session Q&A, and that's in his documentary, so people can see that, and it's free on YouTube. And he's conducting multiple EVP sessions, and he's asking the question out loud because he's trying to get to the truth of, are there any Native American spirits here? Are there any presence here? Is there any relationship to that in the land and what Keith is experiencing? And he's getting several yeses from both underneath the house and from the time he went to the creek, which is right behind the house. Not too many people know about the creek that runs right behind the house through the neighborhood, and there's running water through there. So he spent about another hour and a half behind there. And one of the things they found out prior to arriving, because they interviewed me and they did their research online, and Father Roy was the priest who conducted a house exorcism of the house. And he, through his research, had uncovered that there was Native American burial in and around the city of Bothell due to a smallpox outbreak in the mid-1800s, where 500 Native Americans, unfortunately, were put in mass graves. Now, the exact location of this area is impossible to know because I found it through my research. That the Snohomish County, which is where Bothell is located, as well as King County, didn't really start keeping good record data on cemeteries of both settlers and Native Americans until 1973. I believe it was 1973 that they didn't start keeping good record data. So everything prior to that was suspect and lost. However, there is documented record, and this is once again in my book, especially my second book, links to, but anybody can go online and search themselves, of the mass, smallpox outbreak that pretty much consumed Pacific Northwest, which included Bothell, the Duwamish tribe, aka the Willow People, at that time as they were called, lost between 500 of themselves during this smallpox outbreak. So if you look at the Native American symbol, the upside down man on my wall, and you look that up online, you will see there's only really 2 instances where a Native American person would draw that symbol. And it means a man has died, obviously, but it means also that either a man was either murdered or it could also mean that a man died due to smallpox or another form of disease. That's the only two times that that symbol would necessarily be drawn. Therefore, you can take it either way. Was a Native American murdered in and around that house or that land? I'm not talking about the house or the land directly underneath the house. I'm talking about the vicinity. Or did a man die due to smallpox? Both is true. We know through the history, through the founding of the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, and everything surrounding it, there were factions and wars and outbreaks between settler and Native American, Chief Seattle and whatnot. I mean, the history is there. So Native Americans murdered settlers, settlers murdered Native Americans, smallpox ran amok. Both sides had major casualties. So the spirit who's drawn out on the wall, and then the EVPs that Carissa captured, Nikki captured, and these are some good EVPs. You probably heard some of them. The Dawn captured, the Steve Mara captured. Sort of support what you see about the house or what you know about the house, because the spirits are saying very cleverly, yeah, Native American, yeah, is related to the land, And so that was interesting, and it's not far, or hard to believe from my point of view, that a lot of the phenomena, I said this in my second book, it's sort of like I don't know, vengeful or avenging spirits, if you call it. Also, and this is very important to note for your listeners, because I know this question exists out there. There was a family who had activity 5 years before we arrived, which Ghost Adventure once again didn't interview, but they had activity. I found them. Rhonda, the wife, the housewife, the mother, told her story to me, and this is, like I said, documented in book 1 and book 2, that conversation, the emails back and forth. And she said the house was a living hell. And they had similar phenomena on which we opened your show with. They were having the same type of phenomena. Missing objects, kitchen cabinet doors, electrical issues, phantom footsteps. And saw shadowy figures out the corner of his eye. I saw that too. So when she told me that, it was like, I'm glad to hear it, because going crazy, and it let me know that the problem is not pertaining to me and Tina specifically, but it's pertaining to this house. Something about this house in its geographical location, in addition to the horror that Rhonda unfortunately experienced in the home of being assaulted, which is very detailed and graphic in book 2 and book 1 of that instance, sort of made this house be what it is today.
No, it's fantastic details here in this documentary. It's called "The Demons in Seattle Uncovered," and you can find it free on YouTube. I strongly suggest everybody watch this as a case file on how a haunting works, and it doesn't always like to show itself to specific people or specific groups. Right. Would you agree that the house kind of once in a while likes to make an ass out of the people that live in it?
Oh yes, yeah, all the time. The house wants to make an ass out of the house occupants for the fear of isolation. You bring help in, no activity, right? I mean, I hate it when I go to my auto mechanic and my car is making noise or engine light, right? And the engine light turns off the minute I pull into the parking lot of the car, and everybody's like, oh, "The car's fine, Mr. Linder. Yeah, we did a da. No, it's not. And only weeks later did they determine there was something, but never used it the first time. But yeah, the spirit's there to make you look stupid, like you got delusions of grandeur, to the investigator. It's the investigator's job, in my opinion, to know that in advance, right? To know that the spirits are going to be evasive. They're not going to give evidence willingly. And if you saw the documentary, it sounds like you did, Steve comments on that. He's like, we had to change our investigative method in Keith Linder's house. Today we saw the camera turn or be turned 180 degrees facing the wall. One of Keith's things he was getting dinged on online by Dave Schrader's of the world and whatnot was everything's happening off camera. And that why is this camera always capturing phenomena after the fact? Well, Steve said we witnessed that in the house. There was a camera in the living room. It was trained toward the door. We're all in the kitchen, minding our own business. Keith is in plain sight. And we get these email alerts of a camera motion detected. And we look at the email alerts because it takes snapshots and send them to you. And in the email alert, it shows the camera. You see a wall. You see the front door, which the camera should be facing, and the next picture is the wall. Okay? Nobody has left their location, so you rush toward the camera, and true to form, it's now facing the wall. Now, it's not a remote control camera. This is a camera with a stand on it. It has to be manually turned. You know, there's nobody controlling this camera remotely. And to see that, when Steve said he saw that on day 2, I believe, they changed their formula of how they're going to carry out the investigation because they realized these spirits are evasive, okay? There's certain things we have to now incorporate in our investigative method to capture the data. They're not going to give it to us willingly. So they pivoted on day 2 and threw plan 1 or plan A out the window, just seeing that alone. And it supported my claim all along of what I've been saying with my difficulties with the cameras. But yeah, you're right. A team should know going into, especially a haunting like this, which is, like I say, intelligent haunting, aka poltergeist haunting. Mm-hmm. The spirits are intelligent, and they are not going to walk in and throw an ironing board at you, because that will be the point, right? Well, okay, house is haunted, solve that problem.
Right.
They're not going to do that. TV, I know, makes it seem that way, unfortunately, with some of these ghost shows, but reality is a whole different story.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you cleared that up. There's a lot of details here that I'm going to name some of the activity that happened off at your house here, so we can go through the wide list of categories here, and then I'm going to ask you a few more. They got FLIR evidence, lots of fantastic EVPs, very obvious EVPs that were captured in your house or your old house. There was also oil found weeping from the wall, pictures that have been moved or pushed off the nail, images that have been burnt, including the Bible there, which we'll get into for sure. Then, of course, there was the sound of charging or stampeding, a shaggy-haired man that likes to choke people out. You could see him, smell him, touch him. Then people were scratched. You talked a little bit about that there. But when it comes to what you think is going on as far as the Bible being burnt and the numeric 666, it doesn't fit into the Native American storyline. So what's your theory with what's happening?
Yeah, so the misconception about the Bible's catching fire, because that's one of the sticklers I get from people. Well, Native Americans burning crosses and burning Bibles. Native Americans are not Christian. And I tell people, the Bibles that caught fire in that home belonged to me. And these Bibles were always kept in my closet in the office. It was not until we were advised by the local church, the Catholic Church, and a few paranormal teams when we start having phenomena, to display openly your religious beliefs. Put out religious paraphernalia that you own. If you got a Bible, now's a good time to put it out there. And when you put it out there, you want the entity to see it and get out of your house. Open it to one of your favorite verses, Proverbs or Psalms. Leave it on a kitchen table, coffee table. We chose the hallway bookshelf. It seemed the most logical places. That's where most of the activity was happening. And then pray. You need to pray over it, light a candle, and go about your average daily routine. Well, there's a footnote that often gets overlooked to that, meaning there could be an adverse reaction, like saging. And the spirits, in this instance, when we would put the Bibles out, they did not start torching them right away. They threw them down. They threw them on the floor, or threw them across the room, or threw them at you. I've had Bibles thrown at me. But you're told by the church, well, they're supposed to do that. That's their reaction. But you got to stay steadfast. So I'll put the Bible back up there again, and they would throw it down. I put it back up there again. Well, now the Spirit is like, okay, we're going to take a few of them. We're going to burn a few of them. So it was more of a tit for tat reaction, opposite reaction, escalate the activity. And, some people say, well, Native Americans and Bibles don't mix. That's a real kind of, hard pill. And I said, you got to get out of the circle of thinking religion. Nothing about this phenomena we're experiencing has anything to do with religion, except the portion of what happened in the 1800s, meaning the Native Americans who didn't convert to Christianity were often dealt with. Those who didn't convert were often dealt with, or ostracized, killed, hung, whatever. And you have to take it, if this spirit is from that era, the spirit, if he's from that time frame or that time period, and here comes Keith Hokey Dokey throwing Bibles around, crosses, what would his reaction be? What would you think his reaction would be? All you got to do is open up your history books to see what the reaction was then. So why is it a hard reaction now? And people don't understand that because they're thinking, no, it's like people think two forces can't compete in that same house at the same time. Well, Steve Merridon blew that out the window because some of the EVPs came back with Irish accents. Irish people lived in Bothell in the 1800s. Who do you think the Native Americans were fighting? Okay, you have a new world coming in, an old world fighting not to go out, and they're clashing. And some of the EVPs were of Irish accent, So now you have, and me and Tina, 100-odd years later, come in, new house being built over recultivated land, and spirits are doing this and this and that, and the first thing we run to is our Bibles, as we were advised to do. So a Poltergeist is going to throw them aside. It's going to toss them. It's going to burn them. It doesn't mean that's Satan. It doesn't mean that's Lucifer. But the Spirit wants you to think that. It wants you to think the worst case scenario. And sometimes it's hard not to think that. But for a team, once again, it's up to the team to do their research prior to coming into the home. Me, honestly, and I have nothing against paranormal investigators as a whole, but I think some paranormal investigators are not investigating or researching when they have downtime. I think downtime research is equally important to being in a house environment or a house location. If I was a researcher, and this is me getting on my soapbox, pardon me, if I was a researcher now during COVID-19 and I was restricted to being in location, I would want to increase my IQ in other departments. I would want to increase my IQ in EMF and K-meter or anything you can think of. I want to increase my IQ in the history of the city and state I live in, a poltergeist, of psi phenomena, a telekinesis. I want to become a subject matter expert during this downtime of all that stuff because I think it's the right thing to do. That way when I come across a case like Keith's or Tina's or anybody else's, I can recognize these things at the beginning versus the latter. Stephen Dawn, to their credit, and Nikki and Carissa, to their credit, recognize that at the offset, they weren't playing catch up or trying to come in ooh and ah and make it up as they go. If you make it up as you go, you're not going to be able to connect the dots. And so many people saw the Bibles as, that's too far-fetched. Native American symbols in the office, Bible burners over here, you got this cross over here. Which one is it, Keith? Is it Native Americans or is it demons? You can't have both. Who says you can't have it both? I'm not saying anything. The evidence is telling you can have both. It's the evidence. The poltergeist is burning Bibles because me and Tina are putting them out there. If I put a phone book out there and said, leave my house, or, any book for that matter, AAA magazine, and revered it, put candles around it and say, leave my house right now, they would probably burn that too. They burn whatever you think specifically is important to you. And that's what I wish people would understand about this case, especially about the burning Bibles. The Poltergeist doesn't care about the Bible. He doesn't fear that. It's burning them because it knows we care about it. And most people, oh, he burned my Bible. Oh, that's Lucifer incarnate. Gotta go. That's why it's doing it. We put it out there, it's going to burn. It could be any book for that.
Great, good answer. All right, the book, the Bothell Hell House, the Poltergeist of Washington State, and then part 2, volume 2 of this 3-part series, Attachments. The third book you are in process of writing here, and with our time left, I told you this before the show, I want to talk more about this third book because it gets into the mechanics of what we're talking about, and we've only touched the tip of the iceberg here. I imagine you sound like an analytical guy that understands what he's looking at, the nature of a program. You're working IT, and you see the physical impossibilities, magic happening before your eyes when you see something levitate, and everything else. The voices in the air, for crying out loud. We haven't mentioned that. Voices mid-air happening in this house. Let's talk a little bit about this, what you're working on, if you don't mind, with this third book, and what you're coming away with as far as the hard mechanics of a haunting.
So going back to the beginning of when this phenomena started, and as a witness, me and Tina had front row seats to all the phenomena happening before us. And one of the things I saw every time a phenomena erupted was our current understanding of the laws of physics just either being supported or disavowed in the sense of, whoa, objects changing in mid-flight, objects levitating, objects going through walls, voices coming out of thin air. How is it can you get a voice on a voice recorder that you're holding or is laying down near you, clear voice, we just talk about the clear voices, and you and me not hear that same voice with our naked ear? How is it that you can have two devices laying side by side, identical devices, and one device picks it up, the other one doesn't, or you hear it with the naked ear, like an AVP, one device picks it up, but the other one doesn't. And these spontaneous fires, the fire department came to our Bothell house. They saw the poster after I doused it, and they could not make heads or tails how that poster caught fire. This is the fire department. This is what they do for a living. They saw no incendiary device, no accelerant. Same thing can be said about the Bible. Steve and others held the Bibles in their hand. So my idea for the third book, as I'm writing book 1 and book 2, I'm getting my story out the way. I need to get my story out of my head and be done with it. Book 3 is not a story. Book 3 is going to go back and deal with the mechanics of everything we talked about tonight and then get around to talking to, because it's going to go after the quantum level. We got to get down to the quantum, to the classical physics, because believe it or not, it's the Newton law, Einstein's law, all combined versus the quantum mechanics law. They all are at odds with each other in a Poltergeist home. Things that are unseen are heard. Things that are seen have no sound. We didn't talk about the house humming. And it's just so much there that it really needed to be a book of its own. There was no way I could get it in book 1 or book 2. It would just been too long. And it's going to be very technical. And therefore, since it's very technical, I have to get everything right and exact, more than book 1 and book 2. Book 1 and book 2, I'm just writing based on memory. It's real easy to do. This is going to have to make sense without being too technical, like you'd read in a physics book. And I'm not putting equations in there. I'm not going to make it like, 500, 800 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be interesting, and it's never been done before. But it's going to be interesting because it's going to go after not just my phenomena. I've done research, and I'm incorporating over, I believe the tally right now is maybe 600 other poltergeist cases that's happened throughout history that resemble ours, and some that don't. But some of the fundamentals are always there. I could tell you, you could take any poltergeist case, long time ago, recent, tomorrow, the fundamentals are always the same. And to me, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for the quantum stuff that we see happening, objects teleporting, apporting, asporting, you know, me and Tina
Mm-hmm.
were attacked in 2 places at once. We were attacked in 3 places. I was attacked in a hotel room. Tina was attacked, leaving the house. Scratches. Patty, who's in the documentary that you mentioned, got these 3 blister marks that formed on her hand in real time while we were standing there. 3 lines, just like something invisible was burning into her hand. Quantum or physics should have some theories behind that. I've uncovered successfully some physics that might explain that from a spirit point of view. We're going to get into multiple dimensions. One of the things I noticed with my experience is a lot of these voices I hear, with my naked ear are very close to me, but they're invisible. They're in a room with you. They're observing you. They turn your camera around as soon as your back is turned. They move stuff around. They're relocated to other parts of the house. And I've had dimes rain from my ceiling, just dimes, rain from my ceiling, fall, hundreds of them. Where does that stuff come from? Where is it at when it's not with you? Where were they at prior? Where was the Bible that went missing for a year and a half? I don't believe it was ever in the cavity of the house. I believe it was in another dimension. Science talks about that. With Lisa Randall, who I've been reading thoroughly, and I'm familiar with her, theoretical physicist, she has a lot of theories that I think lends itself to what poltergeists are doing. You ask any physicists, they'll tell you about parallel universes and hidden dimensions, and you read the book Flatland. These are scientists writing books, and they're saying this stuff is around us. We just can't see it with our naked eye. I did not know it at the time, but I know now that the human eye sees less than 1% of reality. We see less than 1%. That means 99.99% of what's real in this universe that's happening between you and me right now, we can't even see. But it's alive. So all that will be book 3. Totally, it's going to be illustration galore. Less wording, more illustration. I'm a firm believer. You got to incorporate the senses. The more you incorporate, so it's going to be drawings, diagrams, charts, all that stuff to where you can see. We're going to talk about the bone black again. We're going to talk about the wall writings, other wall writings, the San Pedro haunting, the San Pedro Poltergeist case. Where did that plasma come from? All that stuff will be in book 3.
Fantastic. Some of the things I wanted to ask you about specifically with the sounds that happen there. The audience is pretty familiar with my theory on how the phenomena deals with visual mediums as far as recording them. It almost is like a no bueno agreement between us, them, and a camcorder in our hand or a camera. But when it comes to audio equipment, it seems like game on. There's a lot more use of using a digital recorder and coming away with some pretty incredible stuff. Do you have any theories on why that would be, or do you agree with that?
You mean why the voices appear on audio devices?
Well, why do you think that, or do you agree that spirits in general are okay with utilizing audio equipment a lot more than showing evidence on a camera? EVPs seem a lot easier to get than as some kind of image on a camera.
Yeah, I have a theory. One of the things, going back to the physics, and these are their words and their theories, but they've been around for quite some time, and they've been tested and vetted, and so far they've held up through the test of time, is when you're dealing with video or visual phenomena. One of the things it's hard to capture is the visual phenomena. But physics talks about something with the electron of the uncertainty principle or the observer effect, meaning that the electron itself, you can never have two scenarios at once. You can either observe the electron, but by observing it, you alter its path. Whatever path it's on, you forever changed it. By knowing the electron's path means you cannot observe it. Weirdest thing ever. Just drives physics crazy. So they're always stuck in that quandrum of we cannot observe the phenomena because if we observe it, we alter its original state. Therefore, we're not getting its original state by observing it. So that requires more testing. So we're just sort of chasing our tail. But it's a mystery, and scientists have yet to figure out why that happens, or why the electron or the photon behaves that way. A good experiment you've probably heard of is called the double slit experiment, where scientists shoot photons through two slits through a cardboard against the back wall, and the observation it hinders the effects of that experiment. The other one is the observer effect, and I know this to be true because I saw it in the home, and this has been documented in other poltergeist cases of objects that are about to levitate. Most people, when they tell you they've seen objects fly across their room, they never see it originally move. They see it in mid-flight. I can tell you, I've never seen an object go from one side of the room to the other, except in mid-flight. I've never seen it leave the stand or pillar it was resting on. But we know it was resting on there because it's now in mid-flight. I have seen or heard things vibrate behind me, and I turn, and the object looks like it's about to take flight. But me turning towards it is like the spirit changed its mind. It's like, no, he's looking now. But the minute I turn my back, going back to that observer effect, the object goes flying. Weirdest thing ever. Like, why is me observing it like that's going to change my belief that it didn't happen? No. I think there's something there that relates to capturing visual phenomena. Now, the audio phenomena, as you know, by definition, is not visual, it's audio. The sound can very easily be captured because sound, is very interesting, is very fundamental, the nature of it. It comes in different ways and patterns. And I've learned this through my recent research, that there's sound all around you and me right now. There's infrasound, there's ultrasound. Sound is invisible to the naked ear, but sound nonetheless. And some of these frequencies, almost like our AM or FM radio, these devices are very exceptional in capturing. They can capture these because the receiver, is picking up these audible from the environment. Sound is somehow reaching the speaker of whatever device and therefore leaving a recording, but I can't figure out, and what I'm still trying to figure out is how are they getting past your eardrum and my eardrum?
Right.
How are they getting past all that and onto the device themselves? I found a few websites, a few scientific journals that give a theory as to that, which will be in book 3, but I'm still researching it. And it's very interesting. I think it finally answers the question of what's actually taking place. But all phenomena that we experience, be it visual, smell, the stench smell, the objects throwing, I could tell you the forever constant in that house and in other poltergeist cases, if you dig deep into them, you find the common denominator among all of them, the thing they all share, is the sounds being reported. You always hear an investigator has to pay important attention to detail because the witness, meaning myself, we don't know what we're talking about, except we just reported what we saw or heard. So if you ask us, well, Keith, did you hear anything strange when the plant flew across the room? Think about it. Yeah. I heard a pop. I heard a hum. I heard a twing, a tweak. And that's been reported in other poltergeist cases.
Hold that thought for a second, Keith. Did you say you hear a pop sound?
Yeah. The sounds, there's a contraction, a concussion.
Yeah.
um, before the phenomena happens that you normally would ignore
Mm-hmm.
because the phenomena just supersedes it. Like, oh man, it
Mm-hmm.
just puts it on the back row.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know early on until I started paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, aha. So there's
Right.
some sort of sound association
Mm-hmm.
with the physical phenomenon. I think it begets it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been trying to drum that into the listeners' ears and anybody else who will listen that if you record enough, you will see
Yeah.
on a program like Audacity that visually you can see these pops, hits, clicks, and taps happen before an EVP or during an EVP or before some
Yeah.
kind of app port happens. So I'm comforted
Yeah.
that you said that.
Yeah. If you watch there's a video on my YouTube channel of the um, Carissa and Nikki are conducting the EVP session over one of the burnt Bibles, and they're asking the Spirit to turn the pages. And right before the pages start turning mysteriously, you hear the pop, pooms, and pings in other parts of the house. It just wows the mind. An average person, not who's so trained on, oh, I just want to hear EVPs, a thrill seeker, they ignore that. But I heard it and I was like, yeah, that's what we hear prior to an activity taking place. Because the energy in the room is changing. The barometric pressure, the
Mm-hmm.
all kind of things, the atmospheric pressure, and it's just energy. It's all energy in its fundamentalist form. And the spirit who's making these pages turn,
Mm-hmm.
they have to use that energy. They're using it, and other parts of the house is going to have to be compensated or taken away from. And
Mm-hmm.
you hear these pops, pooms, and ping. Steve Mayer talks about it great in his book, Fires and Whispers. You would love his book. He talks about it a lot in that because he heard it. He's like the pops, the pooms, the pings.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Tina heard it constantly all the time. And I dialed back and I started making a journal of it in both
Mm-hmm.
books of, yes, that's what you hear before something big starts to happen. Even the feeling of uneasiness, the infamous
Mm-hmm.
feeling of being watched or I feel uneasy. I notice there's sounds associated that are precursors to even that. And so, like I said, that's dissected a lot in book 3. You're gonna love book 3.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, we've been calling it like a paranormal sound barrier, being punched through. Where
Yeah,
just imagine
yeah,
energy passing through a paranormal boundary, or even through the substrate of certain objects like wood or glass or metal. Will have it doesn't really matter what the
yes,
sound is, but you just imagine energy passing through some kind of matter or substrate.
yeah. That's all it is. It's just
Mm-hmm.
energy transforming, rearranging itself, into your new immediate environment.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when people study this, they get that learning,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps decipher future cases. When you hear, Keith Linder say this, Tom over there says that, Jill over there says that, you understand that in itself we just talked about. That's evidence too. That. I mean, I don't know if you know Dr. Barry Coleman
Mm-hmm.
when he did the concussion experiment about the rappings, the strange rapping noises. He wrote a phenomenal PDF about the strangeness of the knocking sounds associated with poltergeist cases. And he included a lot of previous poltergeist cases, including the infield, of recorded rappings, the banging, the tapping sounds, the constant tapping. And he found out that the sound, based on his experiments, and he used Audacity and other software, the sound was coming from within the foundation of the environment, from the wood of the house. The sound, because they use man-made rapping noises, that's out there in the environment, and they
Mm-hmm.
use what the Poltergeist theorized rapping noises, and they were able to see the sound signature are different, much different, way different, like the EVPs, and then you saw the
Mm-hmm.
documentary with Dr. Not Barry Coben, but Barry Fitzgerald was
Mm-hmm.
saying the frequency range of the male and female voice that captured that Stephen Dahl captured in Keith's house are outside the normal spectrum of human male voices. You know, 7 billion people on this planet regardless of how individual we are as people, our voices all live within a spectral range of voices. You know, regardless of how we sound, you know, in person, we all live. There's a threshold. You can put a circle around the human being's voice threshold. These EVPs exist outside that, meaning the sound is not coming from human vocal cords. In theory, you know, it's coming from something, energy, sound, electronic, you know, contrived, artificial, the mimicking, you know, you talk about ghost mimicking, all that stuff, you know. What determines our voice sound is our vocal cords, you know, the muscles, the air going through while I talk. Well, spirits don't have that, right? So why would their voice be in our same spectrum? No, it wouldn't be. It would be different. It would be higher, you know. How are they making it higher? You know, through their, I guess, majesty over sound waves. So it was very interesting.
Right. Yeah, there came a moment in the documentary, again, Demons in Seattle Uncovered. You can watch it free on YouTube. It's all about Keith's case, where a light fell off the wall, and they did a measurement of the frequency and the hertz level based upon dropping the light.
Even that was.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. Whenever is an act, and we'll just say, you know, for now, whenever is something that accidentally falls off a wall, higher in decibel sound than something purposely dropped. Because Steve and Dodd purposely dropped the light again, and they could get nowhere close to the sound level of it when it originally fell. They tried to duplicate it, and I think they got to 36 decibels. The fall was up at least 60-something odd decibels. And it was just a different range in the sense of, you know, and me and Tina knew, we felt this weirdness because we lived in the house. I mean, I've had loud crashing noises, like Tina talked about the piano crashing through a ceiling, or it sounded like somebody dropped a piano in the middle of your living room hard floor. And you rush, you know, you're in the middle of the night, you're rushing to this loud sound, you're thinking your house has been invaded, and there's nothing, right? You hear a plant being thrown or crashing, you rush to the noise, there's nothing. Nothing, beer bottle, same thing. Glass shattered, nothing. Come back to that spot 30 minutes later, and you'll find what you were looking for 30 minutes ago. You'll find a shattered beer bottle. You'll find shattered glass, shattered vase, you know, upside down coffee table. You know, it's like the sound came 30 minutes before the debris, you know, which just riddles the mind from a physical standpoint of how is that even possible? You know?
It's exciting, though, Keith. I mean, as you're describing this as a sci-fi geek, and to know that we, you know, don't have to live in a fictional world to enjoy science fiction. It could be science fact. That's damn exciting. Everything you said, that's possible. I mean, it
is possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and yeah, there's no rhyme or reason, but you know it to be true because your eyes and ears are not lying to you. You know, the furniture dragging sounds that Nikki and Carissa heard while house monitoring from the hallway of large furniture being dragged around. There's a camera in the hallway that's capturing the sound, that's sending an alert, so you know the sound is real because it triggered the camera alarm in the first place, sound detected. But there's an identical camera in the next room over, no more than 20 feet. And you log into that camera and hear nothing whatsoever. So, yeah, the sci-fi part of me, the geek side of me, the IT part of me, I'm just wowed about that stuff. I mean, I expect to see that in a Spielberg movie. I don't expect to see it in my own living room. But I did. Right. And now I have questions, and I know other people have questions, and I've learned from other people's experience, and I found a lot of stuff, and therefore that's why it's purposely called the night side of physics. Poltergeist - the night side of physics, because this is the physics part, in my opinion, that doesn't get talked about a lot in hauntings. I think the paranormal community does themselves a disservice by not talking about the mechanics of what is being reported, and going back to the scientific community saying, hey, what you guys see over there in Geneva and the CERN accelerator and all that stuff, with all gadgets and stuff, people are seeing in their homes. All thing they're doing over there in those accelerators is smashing atoms and watching atoms and electrons and muons and pions and neutrinos and all that stuff disappear. Ask any physicists that I have a few friends over, and I tell you, we see electrons disappear all day. And we don't know where they're going. We see atoms and stuff appear, and we don't know where they came from. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, every day. Like, you see, like, yeah, all the time stuff materializes, Keith, and we study. That's what we do. And I'm like, oh, well, over here in Bothell, I got a house where I see stuff appearing. I don't know where it came from.
Right.
And yeah, so we see the same thing.
Now I know where the coin shortage started. It started at your house, Keith.
Exactly. That's exactly where it's at. Yeah, I got 40 bucks in my house. Yeah. Especially all the dimes. Yeah.
Right. Over at Keith's house. Check him out, man. Hey, before I forget here, too, you mentioned your YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel called?
People can find, just type in Keith L in the YouTube search bar. It's easy to find you. It's over 400 videos there, so it's easy to find. Keith L in the YouTube.
Okay.
Don Phillips' documentary, Demons in Seattle Uncovered. There's 2 Steve Murrah documentaries in conjunction with that one on my YouTube channel about the house. An hour and a half long lecture Steve gives about the evidence found, and another documentary of the narration of what him and Nick Kyle and Don Phillips found. So a lot of stuff in there. A lot of we're still combing through. I find stuff periodically. There's still audio that's yet to be listened to. Every now and then somebody on my YouTube channel, after watching a video, or introduce a voice to me, a voice. We put it through the analyzer, we vet it, we weigh it, and then if it's legit, I'm like, yep, that's one of them. That's it. It's just so much stuff. People who look at this case, who do their own research, spend time and do their own research, definitely read book 1, book 2, because all the evidence is in there, and the documentary. It's academic, in my opinion, now, about the Bothell House being legit and real. The Australian parapsychology or psychological research from Australia has looked at the evidence and have deemed my house rewriting what we understand about poltergeist. The Ghost Club last week did a seminar. I'm gonna make that public in a few weeks, where they discussed the Bothell House. The SPR the same way. There's just a lot of stuff. And everybody's, nobody was dismayed. Who've been in the paranormal were dismayed by the episode, unfortunately, that was on Travel Channel. They saw that as just how not to do an investigation. That's what they were like. They talked to me and saw the evidence in the notes. They were like, yeah, this stuff is typical poltergeist phenomena. What interests us about your case, Keith, is the longevity and the frequency of the activity taking place. But you're on the up and up. You're an IT guy. You're a specialist, and you got witnesses at the yin yang. Cases well documented, and your story stays the same, all the time. As it went from 3 Bibles to 4 Bibles, or 5 or 2 or 1, it's 3 Bibles. So
now, who's in the house now, Keith? Do you have any idea?
Husband and wife moved into the house July of 2016. I never met them. I didn't meet them. I've been asked, have I gone by and poked my head around and saw them? I have not. I purposely have avoided the home.
Right.
My main reason, once again, going back to my low fear factor, is not because I'm, like I said, I still live in Bothell. It's not because I'm fearful of the house. It's because I understand how poltergeist phenomena works. Is I don't want to go to the house and ask people, hey, are you having anything weird going on? I don't want to. They knew the house was haunted. They still bought it. I don't think they knew the specifics of what everything that took place. And to me, that's in their favor. The less you know about the house, the better off you will be. What we learned, and Steve says it in his documentary and book, is that house is always going to have low-level activity. Mm-hmm. The lowest level activity is going to be oblivious to certain residents.
Right.
What got me in trouble was I would have things happen, and I would go searching for it. I knew I did not lose my keys. I knew if I leave a light on in my office when I go get a glass of water, and it's off when I come back, I knew that wasn't me. Mm-hmm. Me and Tina don't have kids, so we know where each other's at. Tina's watching. I passed Tina to get back to my room. Let me put a camera and just train it on my office for 24 hours. Oh, and behold, my camera's not missing. So that made me dig more and more and more as to what was causing the phenomena, which ratcheted up the activity. The average home occupant, and I have family, we all lose stuff, misplaced stuff, you know. But if I go around there telling them, hey, has any Bibles burnt yet? You know, people are going to start looking over their shoulder. Every crook and cranny noise they hear, they're going to think it's Mr. Ghost. So I believe less is more. And also, the important fact of all, not everybody experiences phenomena. Rhonda and her family moved into the house 2008 and left 2009. So that was 5 years before we even arrived. There were 3 other families between us and them. I have not found them. I have not contacted them. But it's quite possible they did not have any activity. They did. I think it's more of a synergy and energy that we brought, me and Tina, and my engagement level that made the activity what it was. If they never have activity in the home, it doesn't make my case less real. Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't. A lot of houses today, infill being one and others, the house is fine after the people who experienced the most hellish activity moved out. And once again, I think from a poltergeist point of view, that's done for a reason. The poltergeist is not here to make believers out of 7 billion people. No, if you wanted to do that, all I had to do is hold a press conference. It could very easily do it, as the evidence suggests. No, the poltergeist gets its and maintain its enigma by doing exactly what it's doing now.
My last question for you, Keith, is that you've moved, but has something moved with you?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what book 2 was about, or is about. Attachments, named specifically for that reason. When I moved out May of 2016, 4 years to the day of when I moved in. And that question hung over my head. Now, that was a subconscious fear factor of me, what subconsciously probably played a role in why I stayed in the Bothell House for so long, is what happens when I move? Am I taking the hell with me? And any percentage of the hell in that house is a lot. And yeah, true to form, day one of me living in my new place, the water puddle phenomena happened. It had only happened once in the Bothell House, but it happened day one of my new location. I still occasionally experience electronical issues, weird battery drainage, mechanical problems with appliances, brand new appliances. They swap them out, put them in somebody else's unit, works fine. Back in my unit, no. Shadowy figures I still see. The poking and the prodding while sleeping. We didn't talk about this tonight, but the heartbeats hear or feel, you feel them more than you hear them, or the pulsation from within the mattress or within the pillow. So all that and the nightmares and the night terrors are what are still continuing. Nothing major, nothing physical to the scale of the Bothell House, but still I would call this a more personal level of activity being witnessed, and sometimes it makes its presence known when out and about with friends or in the dating scene. But yeah, so that's what book 2 is primarily about. Book 2 talks about the phenomenon still happening, the black oil, which we talked about tonight, and why the house was haunted, which we partially talked about tonight. But it's in very detailed form of why that house was the house from hell versus any other house on that block.
My guest tonight has been Keith Linder. The book Bothell Hell House and attachments available now for anybody who can get to a computer and order one. And then your third book, which I'm extremely excited about coming up soon. But what do you think, 2021, 2020, the third one?
Should be out December of this year. I'm going to try to get out my birthday, December 15th of this year. The upside of COVID being on lockdown earlier this year is I'm way ahead of schedule as far as in the writing department. So, I'm still planning to get it out by December of this year.
All right. And the documentary again on YouTube, Demons in Seattle Uncovered. Hey, thanks for your time tonight, Keith. A real pleasure, man.
Hey, man, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Again, that was Keith Linder, who's still at it, and sounds like things are still happening at his new place. And I don't imagine Keith is going to go away quietly into the night just based upon some bad press from the travel channel. So I look forward to meeting the guy sometime and see what happens person to person, a mano, maybe go over some working theories and get back to you and record a part 2 to this here. But again, check out the book, The Bothell Hell House, A Poltergeist of Washington State, and attachments, and soon coming his third book. And then, of course, this documentary, Demons in Seattle Uncovered, free on YouTube. And who doesn't love that price? Again, if you'd like to be a guest, you can do it. Just shoot me an anonymous email, strangebrowradio@gmail.com. If you are an extended experiencer of paranormal interaction and would like to talk about that anonymously, don't need to be a guest. Would just love to compare notes. And if you're local up here in Washington State somewhere, I'd love to talk with you and maybe even more, start to work with you privately about your case. Also, check out the YouTube channel, Strange Brow Radio. Has its own YouTube channel. The more you hit the thumbs up button, the more flexibility, I guess, we have on there. And subscribers, also check out our merchandise channel. You just go to www.strangebrowradio. You'll see the app to click on the merch. And there's hoodies, shirts, socks, all sorts of stuff. And soon, hopefully, those will be promoted on the YouTube channel, so you can just click away when you watch a YouTube video. And, of course, patreon.com/strangebrowradio, where your support, and in particular, I don't know if I want to name names, but someone made a really generous offer. I don't know if it's a one-time offer, but any bit like that certainly helps coming up for the fall season, where I'm probably going to need more gear in order to get out into the field and do this. Also, check out, coming up, I believe August 4th is the date. Tickets will go on sale. And I will be hosting I won't be hosting, but I'll be leading the control panel and speaking at the second Sasquatch Rendezvous, or maybe it's the third Sasquatch Rendezvous. And you can get tickets starting, I believe, August 4th. That is at SasquatchRendezvous.com. Remember, there's a Z and an X in there. Don't screw up like I did. And I'll be speaking. I know Daryl Adams is going to be speaking. Scott Taylor is going to be speaking. These are all Bigfoot people. And I'll be talking more in depth about some different leads regarding the Al Moon Lab and what is happening at the Al Moon altar. And everywhere in between. Also, the filming that has begun. Hopefully I'll have some flexibility on the talking more about what's happening behind the scenes with the Al Moon Lab. So that's it. You all have a great rest of the week, and be safe out there. I will, of course, see you in the trees.